While Chronicles of Illyria is treading into a lot of unfamiliar territory when it comes to online games, one standard feature that many players are looking forward to is combat. Now, it's important to note that the game as the making of this video is in pre-alpha, and all we've seen so far are pre-alpha snippets of gameplay and conceptual pieces. Everything is a work in progress and subject to change. For this dive into the currently revealed equipment, I've invited Caine Dreamwalker, a survivalist and combat tactician, to help give a quick overview of what we've seen from Soulbound Studios so far. As developer Vi explained, each biome in Illyria presents its own challenges and different materials. We got a glimpse at the provocative and practical shield used by the tropical rainforest faring Genoa. Caine, I know that the Genoa are one of the tribes near and dear to your heart due to their combat prowess and rather savage spiritual beliefs. What do you make of this common basic shield of theirs, and how do you think it speaks to their culture?
This shield reflects both the aggression and the tribal roots of the culture. The fact that they've created an item that is a shield that can likely be used offensively shows me that they are of the mindset in which they're constantly looking for an opportunity to attack. It is sort of reminiscent of a joke Wolverine made in one of the X-Men movies about how the best defense is a good offense. Also, it is possible, but hard to tell, this could possibly be used with both hands, depending on how large it is. If big enough, it could be wielded almost as a double-sided spear and held defensively in front, kind of like a riot shield. If not used offensively, and it were smaller in design, then I suspect it would operate as a buckler. In this case, the sharp elements, which could be horns, sharpened bones, or some other spoil from a hunt, would be perfect for parrying attacks.
Do you have any ideas for a weapon that might pair well with a shield like this if it wasn't used two-handed?
A sword or spear both feel like the obvious answer. When using a sword, you could have an even more solid defense because you would essentially have 3 different ways to parry, 4 if you're counting the shield itself. Someone wielding a medium-length spear would be able to rely on the versatility of this shield to deal with close-ranged counterattacks.
Now onto my favorite tribe. The Drauzian sword we got to see has a rather wicked look. When I see this weapon, I notice that the tip of the blade is very short, but there's a serrated edge with what seems to be leather strips woven around the length. Given that the Dross are immune to disease and highly resistant to toxins and poisons, I could see them soaking the leather bits in some sort of deadly substance. What are your thoughts on this design?
The design to me looks a lot like a saber or a cutlass. The interesting thing about that is that those blades are traditionally sharp the entire length and are great slashing weapons. However, they're also well known for devastating thrusts as a sort of coup de grace. So it would appear to me that the weapon is almost best suited for a fencing type fighting style that focuses a lot on using a majority of the weapon for parrying attacks and relying on the tip of the weapon for well-placed thrusts. Looking at the serrated part of the blade, that tactic could be spectacularly brutal when you imagine the kind of tissue damage that would result from having something like that inside you.
Ow!
Exactly.
One of the more controversial pieces to be released so far was the Werdic blade. What caught my eye first was the sort of materials it was made out of, literally looking scrapped together. It has a particularly sharp needle-like protrusion that could seriously hurt if used in the right areas. How could you see this hook-bladed weapon being an advantage in a combat situation?
So first of all, I would say that there are a lot of historical polearms that have somewhat intricate designs. They were used for very specific scenarios and designed with particular tactics in mind. This weapon is sharp on the outside curve, which implies the wielder could take some pretty massive swings with quite a destructive effect. It seems clear that the stiletto portion of the weapon is meant to be used in conjunction with the hook. If I had it in my hands, I'd be using that hook in ways that would trap limbs or even an opponent's neck. Then there's sort of a back and forth thrust meant to yank the opponent toward you and then plunge the spike into them.
Could you, stab someone's eye with that, do you think?
You'll shoot your eye out. Sorry, I couldn't help myself there. I think that would take a lot of accuracy. Depending on the dimensions, this is the sort of thing that could definitely be used to pierce helmets. I have not played any games, however, in which the level of technical skill required to execute some of these maneuvers exists. So that makes me both very excited and a little nervous to see what the game mechanics will actually allow.
We have an easier to relate to and understand piece of equipment in the Herothic shield, a beautifully crafted, not quite rectangular work of craftsmanship. How could you see the shape and relative size benefiting the Herothi?
This is honestly a beautiful piece, and based on the dimensions and placement of the handle, it appears to me as if the Herothic shield is meant for a lot of body coverage. They are a short people, so placing the handle in the middle of a shield that large implies that the bottom half of the shield could extend somewhere close to their knees or even further. I actually love the shape of the sides of this shield with its concave curvature, as it could allow for a very effective shield wall.
So what you're saying is, if Boardwall doesn't place in the Herothi Kingdom, we should be importing the heck out of these things?
Absolutely, especially if Boardwall intends to use tactics similar to the ancient hoplites or Spartans. The curvature of the shield would easily allow for a row of warriors standing shoulder to shoulder to interlock, and then to be able to thrust spears or other blades in between the formation.
Often partnered with Herothi, next we have the Broodbeer. This great axe has so many bits, as Vi described it, and can double as both a combat and survival tool, able to cut down foes or small trees alike. What caught your attention about this design?
This weapon reminds me of when I was a kid chopping wood and my father introduced me to the difference between an axe and a maul. This weapon appears to be a hybrid between the two, whereas with an axe, you rely more heavily on the sharpness of the blade, and with a maul, there's just a lot more steel involved, and the weight does most of the work.
And this really hefty point on top could be put behind the powerful Broodbeer strength and body weight, really puncturing through some key organs, could it not?
I could definitely see it doubling as a spear. My biggest concern is that the balance is obviously skewed to one side, which could make thrusts really difficult to aim.
Yeah, I see more of a wild battle shout and a charge than a carefully aimed attack if it were used that way.
I agree. It's clear that this weapon is really just meant to smash through defenses and destroy whatever soft squishy bits are behind them. You could definitely crack a shield or rip through some armor with something like this.
Now, our last reveal so far was the Kipik's Nito Shield Bracer Arm Guard thing. This is one of the coolest things I've seen, and I can't wait to see how this concept is going to come to life. How does this gauntlet embrace the Kipik's ingenuity and usual avoidance of killing living things?
I think the most important thing to acknowledge here is that this is the first piece of equipment we've seen that is mechanical. That in and of itself shows the ingenuity and aptitude of the Kipik. Not only is it mechanical, but it's obviously fairly complicated, and reminds me of the hidden blade from Assassin's Creed. I really want nothing more than this thing to be sharpened, because to have it be a shield and also some sort of saw blade would be a lot of fun.
Man, even the Kipik need to be little cold-blooded killers in your book, huh?
I certainly know one Kipik that will be.
Well, that was informative. Now, back to the typically friendly protectors of life part.
To me, this piece speaks to the idea of a creature that looks harmless, but can be roused to action if necessary. I'm very excited to see if the rest of their gear is going to be similarly designed, so that they are able to maintain an appearance of being diminutive, while having the ability to immediately transform in order to deal with violent situations.
I admit, I myself am quite curious to see not only the Kipik inventions that will be unveiled in the near future, but the common and uncommon weapons, shields, and other pieces of equipment that will undoubtedly be shared soon. So far, we've not gotten to see any uniquely Tereshian gear, though we can assume much of the base things we've seen were probably Niran. Before we go, though, thank you, Caine, for your insightful views. Now, I ask those of you watching, what do you think we'll see next, and what was your favorite reveal so far?